I think a lot of people are most interested in speaking skills when learning a language. And I think this is not only because of the significant role that conversation plays in a language, but also because of the fact that proficiency is often judged based on your ability to engage in conversation. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The problem, though, is when you focus solely on conversational practice to improve your speaking skills. And as many of you probably experienced, simply practicing speaking in Korean doesn't necessarily lead to significant improvement. And the reason for that is because when we speak, we naturally use words that we are already familiar with. And because we're using what we already know, there isn't much room for significant improvement. But don't get me wrong, of course, speaking practice does have benefits. So by continuously engaging in speaking, it helps you to retrieve what you know and effectively use them. And over time, that builds confidence and speed in using the target language. But speaking practice alone cannot fill the gaps in our overall linguistic abilities. Then, what additional practice can help us do that? So I think it ultimately comes down to sentence construction. So when speaking, we're essentially constructing sentences, right? Unless it's a really short answer like 네, 아니요, 안녕하세요, So a very big part of fluency has to do with sentence construction skill. And at the core of sentence construction is 어순 and 문장 구조, so word order and sentence structure. So at the very basic level, the word order of Korean goes subject, object, verb, as opposed to English word order subject, verb, object. And this is the most basic structure. And as you advance, of course, it gets more complex and longer. But for now, let's take 으려고, for example, the Korean grammar that expresses the intention. So in English, it's most common to say like, I did that to win, right? The action clause, did that, comes first, followed by the intention clause, to win. But in Korean, it's 이기려고 그랬어. That fits the word order, where the intention clause, 이기려고, comes first, and then the action clause, 그랬어. So many learners can grasp this concept during Korean lessons, but it often takes time and practice for this structure to flow, to come out naturally in your spoken sentence, in your spoken language. And the challenge with word order or sentence structure, especially when it's significantly different from your native language, is that while you may understand it intellectually, internalizing it into your language system so that it becomes second nature without conscious effort is a different story. So even though we may intellectually grasp a concept, fluent application in speech or writing doesn't happen overnight. And this is a common experience for most of us learners. So the question is, how do we train ourselves to internalize the natural sentence constructors? And it's none other than constant exposure to Korean sentences through input practice, like listening and reading. But exposure alone isn't enough. You must also make a genuine effort to comprehend the materials. So you can pick a material that you like to practice comprehension with and engage with it for at least 20 minutes a day. And what's important is that you keep engaging with each sentence until you finally understand it, even if it takes time. And if you encounter a sentence that you don't understand very well, then you can try breaking down each element, looking up unfamiliar words, or trying to understand the context. So by consistently immersing yourself in active engagement of comprehension, Korean sentences and their structures gradually become more and more ingrained in you. And the ones that have been internalized in you will come out naturally when you need to use it in appropriate context of speaking. And if you're wondering what kind of materials you can use to practice reading and listening comprehension with, it's always best to choose the ones that match your level, so that doesn't go way beyond your level or way below your level. If you are a complete beginner who has only just finished Korean alphabet, then there are limits to practicing input because naturally you do not know much to understand most sentences, right? So it's recommended to learn enough vocabulary and grammar before engaging in input practice. And after acquiring like basic vocabs and grammatical knowledge, you can use like comprehension practice books made specifically for Korean learners, like these kinds of books. And another option is using the topic question banks, the test of proficiency in Korean. So, whatever it is, I recommend using materials that are designed for learning purposes rather than using the ones that are published for native speakers, unless you're above a certain level. So, back to the point, in a nutshell, consistent engagement in reading and listening comprehension is powerful for improving language skills because it has to do not only with constant exposure, but also the internalization of the word order and sentence structure of the target language, which is the essence of sentence construction skills. And this actually should be a lifelong training, meaning it applies to high level learners as well. So I personally consider myself a fluent English speaker, but I do feel that my fluency fluctuates depending on the day. So after reading like an entire English book or listening to a interesting long podcast, my English flows better. But if I don't have time for such activities, then I do feel that my English doesn't flow as much. So I think whatever language it is, or however fluent you are, engagement and comprehension is essential for maintaining and also continuously improving your language. So, if you want to improve your speaking skills, it's important not only to practice speaking, but also to dedicate your time to focus reading and listening practice. And as you continue to build on this, I'm sure you'll experience remarkable changes in your language abilities. And one last thing I want to add is writing practice can also help with your speaking. So writing is essentially slow speaking, right? It gives you more time to form sentences by thinking about word choices and word order. So it's a really good practice to refine your output skills. So if you're not really comfortable with speaking practice, or you cannot really afford the time or the environment where you can like meet up with native speakers and practice speaking, then you can replace it with writing practice. You could maybe like write a journal or whatever it is that you want to write about in Korean. And this will be a great output practice as well. All right, so that's a wrap for this video, and I hope you found it helpful and gained some insight or guidance for your journey towards fluency. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. 안녕.